Okay, so now, brothers, this is going to be the epilogue for the video that I've just done on Colin Kaepernick and the release of his new signature shoe for Nikkei, aka Nike, which in and of itself is a bit of a revelation. It was always meant to be an allusion to the worship of the mother goddess, and that is the true system of idolatry that is prevalent throughout the entertainment sphere. It's just unbeknownst to the masses. Eventually, they want to let the people all across the world, not just in Western society, but all across the world, understand what their idea of the true celestial aspect is, or the true spiritual aspect is. That being the horn god, the mother goddess, and the divine hermaphrodite, their quote-unquote son. Please understand that all of the quote-unquote pagan deities have both a masculine and a feminine manifestation. That's why they promote the doctrine of equality in this society today. Or as I've touched on in other videos, the alchemical ideology of the rebis, R-E-B-I-S. The coming together of the red king and the white queen. It's really just talking about Adam and Eve. But over the course of this epilogue, I'm just going to go about proving that the slogan, "Stay true to 7, in reference to Colin Kaepernick, is really just a surreptitious way to communicate to the audience, the viewers, the listeners, etc., that Colin Kaepernick is just another pawn in the game. He's a Nike asset, and he's a Monarch athlete. His entire life has been scripted for him, relatively speaking. And so many cats come on my channel, not to digress, but I have so many cats who come on my channel and they ask me, why do you talk about sports when sports is scripted? When I hear someone say that, what that tells me is that that person was at some point in their life an idolater. They worshipped sports as a religion. So when they happen to come across someone's channel who's able to show them in some way, shape, or form what sports actually is, that being just a pastime. The term sport means entertainment. It's such a shock to them that they respond by throwing out the baby with the bathwater. Sports is an invaluable tool to instruct, because what it does is it embodies all of the core components of humanity. Who gives up? Who has resolve? How do people respond to adversity? There's so many lessons that you can teach through the backdrop of sports, and beyond that, the so-called black man is interested in sports, and my channel is geared towards the so-called black man. So that's how I draw in brothers, so that we can talk about more serious topics. But just getting back to the point, Colin Kaepernick, he's an MK asset. And Nike, or Nikkei, was always meant to be a coven for Monarch athletes, for hermeticists, for quote-unquote witches and warlocks per se. And once again, I'm going to go over through the course of this epilogue, detailing to brothers that Colin Kaepernick was given that number 7 to show that he's programmed to venerate the mother goddess, also known as the Shekinah, in the Tree of Life Kabbalistic doctrine, and also the quote-unquote god Saturn, also known as Capricorn, also known as Pan. All of these things fit together. And as you brothers watch many of these videos that I'm going to release on Patreon, you're going to see that it's not just Kaepernick. It's also LeBron James. It was also Kobe Bean Bryant, Michael Jordan, Serena Williams, Tiger Woods, etc. So that's why we have to focus on the sports, so that brothers put their spirit more into the Most High and into the scriptures. And you can still watch sports and enjoy it in the same way that you go to a movie. You understand that the movie is scripted, that those are characters, but you can still learn things from that. There's no need to throw out the baby with the bathwater when you have a mature mind. But as we can see here, Colin Kaepernick was given the number 7. His parents were his handlers. But let's find out about the origins of Nike and what Phil Knight was going to name that corporation. What were some of the terms that he was considering? What were some of the names for Nike that he was considering other than Nike? So brothers, it says here, what could have been? In Phil Knight's memoir, Shoe Dog. And I do believe that that term, dog or shoe dog, is an allusion to the star system or the constellation Canis Major, which came to be known in ancient Kemet as Anubis, the companion of Orion. And I'm sure that many people out there will say that sounds a bit far-fetched. I'm just going to read down through this blurb and help you brothers understand what we're dealing with here. So it says, what could have been? In Phil Knight's memoir, Shoe Dog, amazing stories and insights behind Nike's genesis were shared for the first time. One chapter talks about the company not having a name as the initial shoes were being made, and 3 options bounced around. Nike. Brothers, please understand that the real pronunciation of that word is Nike. It's talking about the mother goddess. Most of you know that by now. Nike was the name in Greek. In ancient Roman was Victoria. That was also known, of course, as the goddess of victory, the goddess of war, or the golden goddess, which is one of the reasons why you'll see many of the top female entertainers, like Jennifer Lopez or Beyonce, they'll dress in gold. That's an allusion to Nike or Nike. Also the manifestation of the quote-unquote sun goddess, Aurora. But let me read this again. One chapter talks about the company not having a name as the initial shoes were being made, and 3 options bounced around. Nike, for the mother goddess. Falcon. Now, brothers, we know that the term falcon is an allusion to who? Horus or Heru, who was always symbolized by a raptor bird, whether it was an eagle or a hawk or a falcon. So we know that when we see the term falcon, that's talking about Horus or the divine child, also known as Harpocrates. And Dimension 6. Now, brothers, why would Phil Knight have considered calling his company Dimension 6? The 6th planet is what? It's Saturn. You understand that? So now just reading on. Shoe Dog Pack highlights the company's past with Nike's first running shoe released, the Cortez. Dimension 6 was Phil Knight's name of choice, and this rendition mirrors the original with a flipped heel tab, exposed foam tongue, and single layer of premium leather. So I'll probably be doing a video on Nike later on in one of these future batches. If you pay very close attention, Phil Knight always dresses in all black because he is a Saturnian. All of these elite level entertainers, and when I say entertainers, I'm not just talking about singers and dancers, also the rappers, the major sports stars, politicians, etc. They're all Saturnians, they're all Hermeticists. They're all witches and warlocks, or quote-unquote magi. So brothers, this right here is an alchemical symbols chart. And I'm going to be revisiting this chart over the course of this epilogue. I just want you brothers to become familiarized with many of the symbols that we see here, because they do provide a portal or a doorway into understanding what's going on around us in this Luciferian time, in this time period where the Babylonian Kemetic mystery school system is promoted, just so that we're able to recognize when there's certain levels of programming that are being pushed upon us or our children, etc. So as we can see here, it says alchemical symbols. Along the left, the upper left, it says 3 principles: sulfur, salt, and mercury. And when you look at the symbol for mercury, it's almost like a man with 2 horns. You see that? Mercury is also known as Hermes, also known as Thoth or Tahuti, also known as Enki, for you brothers who are familiar with some of the Sumerian mythologies. He was the great water bearer. He was also known in Kemet as Hapi, H-A-P-I. That was one of the names that the Joker was called in his film The Joker. And when you watch that series, you see how I broke down how the Joker was the water bearer. He was the Aquarian or Aquarius. He was the person who had to climb up the stairs, the stairway to heaven, to be enlightened by the Sirius star or the Sirius star, the dog star, aka his mother. He received enlightenment and transformation by killing his old self. Now, when we look at the 4 elements part in the upper right hand portion, it says that the upwards triangle represents fire. That's what we saw occur in the demise of Kobe Bryant. That was a funeral pyre. He had to be transformed through incineration. The old body was destroyed so that he could transcend to the celestial sphere and become a god and join the quote-unquote Greek hero cult. We also saw that with the other character, Nipsey Hussle. The next symbol is the upward triangle with the line through it. It represents air. Brothers, that's a symbol for the mother goddess. Okay? The symbol for the mother goddess appears to be the pyramid with the proverbial capstone. Like for you brothers to read the scriptures, it tells us about the prince of the power of the air. The prince of the power of the air is in reference to Heru, because he is the son of the air element. The air element is the mother goddess. That's why she's always likened unto the Holy Spirit, aka Juno, the dove goddess, quote unquote. We see the downward triangle for water. That also represents the mother goddess, as we're going to see over the course of this epilogue. The downward triangle with the line through it represents earth, which also is for the mother goddess. Then we see the plus symbol, or the upward cross symbol, for the elements. Now at the bottom here it says planets and metals. And reading from the left, we have the crescent moon symbol. And the alchemical metal associated with the moon is silver. That's something to always remember, because as I pointed out in other videos, whenever you see many of these notable female quote-unquote stars, celebrities, or superstars, and they attend some of these galas or award shows, they tend to dress in the shimmering silver dress. Always pay attention to that. That's because they're playing many mother goddesses. It's a gathering of witches. It's a gathering of alchemists or hermeticists at these award shows or galas. The Kobe Bryant funeral was a gathering of hermeticists or witch doctors, warlocks, magis, sorcerers. So we see the next symbol for Mercury is quicksilver. I'll probably be mentioning this in the video that I do on the X-Men. And I know that I touched on it in the video that I did on the Avengers. The character of Quicksilver, the Avenger. Sometimes he's shown as having wings on his feet because he represents Mercury or Hermes. Hermes has the wings on his feet. And that's another thing. Many brothers say that the check on the Nike shoes is for the planet Saturn. No, the check represents the wings on the feet of the mother goddess Nike. Or in her masculine manifestation, the quote-unquote god Hermes or Mercury. He has the wings on his feet. So the next symbol that looks almost like a man or like a lollipop with a cross through it, Venus, and the metal associated with Venus is copper. The next one we see is the circle with the dot in the middle of it. That's the sun for gold, the quote-unquote alchemical gold. That is what they seek to manifest themselves as once they've reached their highest level. That is what Kobe Bryant reached. So he became proverbial Heru once he sacrificed himself and his daughter. That's why he wore the eagle skull cap in his last appearance. He wore the orange sweatshirt and the eagle skull cap. Remember that? The next symbol is basically an inverted version of the Venus symbol. That's the Mars symbol. You see how the Venus symbol looks almost like a lollipop with a line through it? And the Mars symbol is that same symbol except turned upside down? Because Mars represents war. Venus represents quote-unquote love. So that's why they're always paired together. Also in that Avengers video that I did, I showed you how Captain America represents Aries or Mars. And the character of the Black Widow represents the mother goddess. That's why they're always linked. She was Athena, the goddess of wisdom and war. So now the next symbol is Jupiter, and that's 10. If you remember, the film Wizard of Oz had the Tin Man. That was a proverb for Jupiter. O.J. Simpson was under what they call Tin Man programming. He was a monarch athlete, O.J. Simpson was. And the last symbol, of course, is Saturn or lead. That's the 7th symbol, Saturn for lead. In the film Superman, I addressed that film in the video I did on Steph Curry, Fire and Ice, the Saturnian principles. And I mentioned how Superman, when you watch the film, remember, he could not see through lead. He represented a Caucasian version or caveman version of Heru. So Heru is the gold on the alchemy chart. Saturn is where Superman came from, also known as Krypton, the ice planet. And that's represented by lead. In the story of Osiris or Sar, when he was put in the coffin by Set, it was a coffin made of lead so that he could not escape. So I just wanted to go through this chart one time, and we'll be revisiting this chart over the course of this epilogue. So now, brothers, I just wanted to go through some further examination of the promotion of the number 7, at least on the Luciferian side, and what it represents. We know that in the scriptures, the number 7 represents completion. But on the Luciferian side, the number 7 also represents completion, but in a different way. It represents enlightenment, the opening of the crown chakra, which I'll be touching on a little bit later, and the welcoming in of the quote-unquote divine mother, the goddess of understanding, the so-called Holy Spirit, what they call the Shekinah. And I just want brothers to understand this. When you hear a lot of these cats who call themselves 5%ers and they say that they're gods, what they're doing is they're trying to reinvigorate the teachings of the serpent to Eve. Remember that the great divining serpent or the great teaching serpent taught Eve, and Eve went and taught Adam. The number 7 once again represents the opening of the crown chakra. And as we can see here, the 5%ers have the number 7, and they also have the 8-pointed star in the backdrop of the number 7. The 8-pointed star is for the mother goddess Inanna. The 8-pointed star is also for the quote-unquote god Jupiter or Zeus. You'll see that right next to the number 7, they have the 5-pointed star or the Sirius star, also for the mother goddess. There are a lot of these cats out here today, especially in the sports world and in the hip-hop world. A lot of cats from New York City who embrace the so-called 5%er doctrine, but it's all based in the Kabbalah. It's all based in the Kabbalah, Hermeticism, Luciferianism. And we're going to go about examining some of the origins of the significance of these numbers, their history, and how it's applied specifically to the so-called black man and woman today, and how so many of them are misguided and confused because most of these Babylonian teachings are cloaked under the facade of being quote-unquote pro-black. That's how they suck our people in. Oh, that Bible is the white man's book. These are the real teachings from the quote-unquote ancestors. No, these teachings are from the Babylonian Kemetic mystery school system. And it's meant to bring you back into a spirit of confusion, pansexuality, and ritualistic blood sacrifice. That's why what you'll find is that all of these groups and religions that got started supposedly to uplift and enlighten the people always resulted in becoming a sex cult. That's all it was. But once again, let's pay very close attention to the symbology of the quote-unquote 5%ers. The number 7 there for the crown chakra and for the planet Saturn. The 8-pointed star in the background, which represents the quote-unquote pentacle of Jupiter, also the star of Inanna, the mother goddess. And the 5-pointed star inlaid next to the number 7, which is for who? The Sirius star, the dog star, for Isis or Sopdet. As we can see here, the superstar basketball player currently with the Brooklyn Nets, Kevin Durant. When he first came into the NBA, he was known as the person who used to walk around with a Bible in his backpack. It was only a matter of time before he got worn down into the official religion of NBA superstars, that being Hermeticism. That's why he's following around Kyrie Irving, because Kyrie is his master. He is the apprentice. You understand that? That's why so many of these dudes in the NBA were weeping for Kobe, because Kobe was a grand warlock. He was a grand warlock within that sphere. His job was to teach all of these players coming into the NBA how to utilize Luciferian teachings to augment their game. As we can see here, once again, Kevin Durant is wearing the quote-unquote number 7 for Kaepernick, and he changed his number to number 7. Formerly number 35, it will now be number 7 when he comes back. And when they asked him, why you changing your number to number 7, he responded with a very obscure statement, as if he did not want to divulge the true reason why he was changing his number to number 7. The reason why he changed his number to number 7, in my view, is because he's an Hermeticist. He's also embraced a lot of the teachings from Mr. Kyrie Irving and most of the other Svengali across the NBA, who are also Hermeticists, aka warlocks. So now, brothers, here's your boy Carmelo Anthony, a transparent and avowed 5%er. Look at the picture that he posted here. This was not by accident. He has his hand right underneath his chin, making the Masonic gesture that he's in the know and that he's going to keep the secrets. And look at what he says here in some of the verbiage. Carmelo Anthony, the universe's timing is perfect. Brothers, whenever you hear a dude use that term, the universe, he's talking about the mother goddess. He's a mother goddess worshiper. And I'm going to show you that further on in this video. Carmelo Anthony is. I'm going to read it again. The universe's timing is perfect. God, 7, or the universe, never hurries and plans are never rushed. You see that, brothers? He aligns the term God with the number 7. I'm sure that he's talking about the black man and the black woman, but if he's been enlightened and illuminated, he's really talking about the goat god Pan, because once again, Pan is Saturn. Saturn is the quote-unquote 7th sphere, or the 7th heaven. I'm going to be dealing with that later on in this epilogue. It's the 6th planet, but it's the 7th quote-unquote heaven, according to the Egyptian Babylonian mystery school system. That's according to the masculine manifestation. The feminine manifestation is as the Shekinah, or the Kabbalistic aspect, and we're going to see the link between the Kabbalah and 5%erism a little bit later on, just in a moment, as a matter of fact. Because the 5%er doctrine sprang out of the Kabbalah. That was the job of Clarence XIII X, to enter into the Nation of Islam, cause a splinter, and reintroduce the gematria aspect, or the numerology aspect, and the Kabbalistic aspect back into quote-unquote black consciousness. That's why they talk about the quote-unquote divine mathematics. You understand that, brothers? But once again, this guy here is a mother goddess worshiper and a worshiper of the horned god. That's why he says God, 7, or the universe never hurries and plans are never rushed. Underneath it says hashtag Me7 Mondays, hashtag 007, hashtag Stay Mellow. And instead of an L, he has a 7 there. Of course, the number 7 looked like a crooked L if it was turned upright or upside down. So that's another way to say as above, so below. Carmelo Anthony is an illuminist, or a hermeticist. And that's why they had that ritual with him and Chris Paul and D Wade and LeBron James all standing on stage at the ESPYs dressed in all black. Remember that about 4 years ago? They were the 4 warlocks who were going to be chosen to push a lot of the quote-unquote new age black consciousness in the aftermath of the removal of Muhammad Ali. And then a little bit after them came Kaepernick, who was activated by his handler, Ness Nitty. Okay, so now, brothers, just to bring home the point that I made, that the 8-pointed star in the background of the number 7 in the emblem of the 5%ers is for the mother goddess Inanna. This is from the film Wonder Woman. Remember that quote-unquote Wonder Woman's name is Diana, of course an allusion to the Greek goddess of wisdom and the hunt, Diana, aka the moon goddess, aka the Shekinah, because Shekinah is likened unto the moon. As we can see here, her headband has that 8-pointed star on it. We also saw this same 8-pointed star in the film Captain Marvel, because that's the same character, Inanna, or the quote-unquote Queen of Heaven. You understand? Here's another close-up of the same character. That's why they push these emblems and these energies in these films, brothers. They're trying to promote the mother goddess archetype on the masses in these last days. Everything is about the divine feminine. Everything. So now, brothers, let's delve a bit deeper into the 5%er aspect of this Kaepernick storyline. And the reason why I want to cover this aspect is because so many brothers are caught up into the 5% doctrine. And do not be surprised if Colin Kaepernick comes out of the closet as a so-called 5%er sometime in the near future. As we can see here, this is the so-called founder of the 5%er doctrine, who went by the name of Clarence the 13X. In my view, he was a plant from the U.S. military. Let's read some of his biography. It shows here the 5% emblem, also known as the universal flag of Islam. Once again, brothers, whenever you see that term universe or universal, it's normally talking about the Luciferian godhead of the horn god, the mother goddess, and the divine hermaphrodite. As we've already shown, or as we've already seen, the 8-pointed star in the background represents the mother goddess. The number 7, we're also going to see, represents the mother goddess, as well as Saturn, or Pan, the horn god. And the 5-pointed star is for the Sirius star, or the dog star. It says here the 5% emblem, also known as the universal flag of Islam, I, self, Lord, and Master. Brothers, that's talking about the doctrine of Adam. The doctrine of Adam and Eve. Okay? That's what the term nation of gods and earths means. It's talking about Adam and Eve. They're worshippers of Adam and Eve. It says here, Allah the Father, formerly Clarence the 13X, the founder of the nation of gods and earths. Once again, brothers, the term gods and earths is in reference to Adam and Eve. That's who they worship. Remember that Adam was also known as Ptah. He's the great craftsman, or the great maker. Eve also goes by numerous names. For example, the Shekinah. Eve was also known as Lilith. Lilith is just the dark aspect of Eve. That's it. They're not two separate people. You understand that? So after they partook of the fruit or the teachings of the serpent, they taught the rest of mankind those ideologies. That's why eventually the Most High had to destroy the old world, but their teachings lasted past the flood through Ham and Cush, Nimrod, etc., Japheth as well, so on and so forth. So now, brothers, it states here, the 5% nation, sometimes referred to as the nation of gods and earths, NGE/NOGE, or the 5%ers, is a movement founded in 1964 in the Harlem section of the borough of Manhattan, New York City, by Allah the Father, who was previously known as Clarence the 13X, and before that, Clarence Edward Smith. Brothers, those are some of the foundational aspects of starting a cult. Give yourself an exalting title that makes your followers view you as some type of God figure or high-level deity figure. Most of these cults are really just CIA or intelligence psyops. They're not meant to last that long. They're only meant to last long enough to spread the doctrine. Then they kill the leader. You understand that? Clarence Edward Smith was born February 22nd, 1928 in Danville, Virginia. In 1952, Smith was inducted into the United States Army, where his service in the Korean War and Japan earned him honors and medals, including the Korean Service Medal with 1 Bronze Service Star. Upon his honorable discharge from the military in 1960, Smith began visiting the Nation of Islam's Temple No. 7, where he was captivated by the speeches of El-Hajj Malik El-Shabazz, aka Malcolm X. In other words, that's what he was assigned after his time in the military was over. Just my perspective on it. Once again, everything that I'm saying in this video is alleged. but it's just my perspective that that is where Clarence was assigned after he was officially done in the military, at least on the record. It says here, Smith joined the Nation of Islam and was renamed Clarence the 13X in accordance with the NOI's customs. As a member of the Nation of Islam, Clarence the 13X was an avid student of Malcolm X and NOI literature and lessons. He also became a member of the Fruit of Islam. The Fruit of Islam, for those of you brothers who don't know, was the dedicated security force for the Nation of Islam. Proficient in the martial arts, usage of guns, etc. They were a very high quality security team. In 1963, Clarence the 13X began teaching his NOI students that the black man, collectively, was the original man. Brothers, who is the original man? The original man is Adam. You understand that? When you read the scriptures, Adam represents the earthly man. Christ is the celestial. That's why the scriptures tell us that Christ came to offset the deeds of Adam. Through Adam came the fall of man. Through Christ comes the redemption of the nation of Israel. Do you understand that? So that's how they offset one another. Once again, Clarence the 13X, in my view, was dispatched as an agent, most likely under mind control. Remember, he was in the Korean War, so I have very little doubt that he was a Manchurian candidate sent into the Nation of Islam to cause a splinter. Let's read on here. It says, in 1963, Clarence the 13X began teaching his NOI students that the black man collectively was the original man and quote-unquote God, and he rejected the Nation of Islam's doctrine that its light-skinned founder, Wallace Fard Muhammad, was Allah. Well, that makes sense because Wallace Fard Muhammad wasn't even a so-called black man, much less being the fleshly manifestation of the Most High. But that's neither here nor there. Brothers, there have been so many pitfalls that have been sent out and stumbling blocks that have been sent out to trip up the people. That's why you have to stay in the scriptures, man. Let's see here. It says between 1963 and 1964, Clarence the 13X left the Nation of Islam, renamed himself Allah, and founded what is known as the 5% Nation of Gods and Earths. 5%ers called him the Father because many of them were the products of broken homes, and this was the only father they knew. Once again, brothers, this is common cult conditioning. You take on a title for yourself of royalty that implies that your listeners, your congregants, your adherents must show obeisance unto you. So it's very, very common for cult leaders, especially who are trained by intelligence agencies, to call themselves Father, Great Father, Daddy. They'll have many of their congregants or parishioners call them by those titles. That reinforces that you must do whatever they tell you. Once again, they almost never last for more than 5 to 10 years. Long enough to build up a high-level following, and then they'll have another operative put that person to death, or they'll have the asset go through self-destruct programming. We saw it with Jim Jones. We saw it with David Koresh. We saw it with Clarence the 13X. They have to be sacrificed because that traumatizes the viewer, that traumatizes the parishioners, the cult members, etc. Then you can start from square zero and do the whole thing all over again. I'm going to read it again. It says, 5%ers call him the Father because many of them were the products of broken homes, and this was the only father they knew. Thus, Allah also became known as Allah the Father, or Father Allah. Members of the group called themselves Allah's 5%ers, which reflects the concept that 10% of the people in the world know the truth of existence, and those elites and their agents opt to keep 85% of the world in ignorance and under their controlling thumb. The remaining 5% are those who know the truth and are determined to enlighten the 85%. Brothers, this is what's known as a Trojan horse mechanism. Basically, what that means is that the facade or the veneer is that they were set up to be a force for enlightenment or edification, when in all reality, they're just another avenue or channel to push globalism and Luciferianism. If you talk to most 5%ers, underneath all that black man is God bullshit, they really just want to hold hands with everybody, and they want attention. And they don't understand the Bible, so it's easier to glorify themselves and call themselves gods. It's a bunch of nonsense and balderdash. It says here, the nation of gods and earths teaches that black people are the original people of the planet Earth, and therefore they are the fathers or gods and mothers earths of civilization. The nation teaches that supreme mathematics and supreme alphabet, a set of principles created by Allah the Father, is the key to understanding humankind's relationship to the universe. The nation does not believe in a God, but instead teaches that the Asiatic black man is God, and his proper name is Allah, the Arabic word for God. Well, brothers, there are a lot of issues with that alleged understanding. First of all, the name Allah or God, it just means power or powers. And that's in allusion to the angels, who are the powers that were utilized by the Most High to create everything that we see. In accordance with Genesis, the 1st chapter, Colossians, the 1st chapter and the 13th verse, so on and so forth. Everything was created through the word, that being Christ. Christ gave the word to the Elohim or the Elohim, the angels or the powers. You understand that? The so-called black man is a creation. He's not the creator. He's meant to be a physical manifestation of the Most High and the angels in heaven. That's why the scriptures tell us in Psalms 147 verses 19 and 20 that the Most High gave his statutes and his commandments, his judgments unto Israel. He have not dealt so with any other nation. So that's why he set the nation of Israel up, the men of the nation of Israel up, to be judges, aka quote-unquote gods on the earth, to implement his laws and his statutes. That's the level to which the so-called black man is a quote-unquote god when he's in his right mind, which the vast majority of brothers are not in their right mind. So that's why we're at the bottom in this society. You understand that? As long as you continue to push this notion of the black man being a god, and there not being a God in the heavens, that's like an orphan refusing to acknowledge his father. As long as you do that, you'll have no history, you'll have no lineage, therefore you'll have no real future. Bottom line. So it states here, after leaving the NOI, Clarence the 13X and John 37X, brothers, by the way, the letter X is used to signify the unknown. The letter X is the symbol for the quote-unquote unknown God, aka Amun-Ra, also known as the ram-headed God. So all these various doctrines always point back to Luciferianism. The only thing that doesn't are the scriptures. That's it. That's it. I saw a comment that a brother made on one of these Patreon videos where he said that he reads the Quran and he's a Muslim because the Quran only has one version. The Bible has multiple versions. No, that's not true. All the Quran is a version of the Bible. The Quran is another version of the Bible. A very debased version of the Bible at that. So let's get that understood very quickly. But I'll be covering that most likely in another video, if I ever get the chance to delve deeply into that topic. This notion that the Quran only has one version, therefore it's superior to the Bible, that's nonsense. The Quran is a bastardization of the Bible. That's why if you open up a Quran, everything in there is about the characters from the Bible. Because even Muhammad knew that the Bible was the source and the fount, not the Quran. What Islam is an Arabic version of Catholicism. That's all it is. But once again, that's another video for another day. Let's continue reading on here. After leaving the NOI, Clarence the 13X and John 37X continued to study the group's teachings, sometimes while smoking marijuana. And brothers, what were they trying to do? They were trying to tap into the astral plane. You understand that? It's the equivalent of these cats who are rappers or singers who have to smoke strong weed before they lay down their tracks. And they say that they're talking to Rain Man. Who is Rain Man? That's talking about Amun-Ra, the goat-headed entity or the ram-headed god, the inspiration for creativity, aka Khnum, right? The goat god, the god of creativity. That's who they're summoning or trying to summon. So let me read on here. They assumed new names. Clarence the 13X took Allah, and John 37X, Abu Shahid. After reading an NOI book with 34 riddles, known as the Lost Found Lessons, John 37X concluded that numbers represented specific concepts, such as knowledge or wisdom. Hey, brother, sound familiar? I get a lot of these dudes on my channel now acting like they're going to break down numbers and trying to put on this front like they did it on their own. I know that you was on that white boy channel and trying to bring that shit to my channel, acting like you know what you're talking about. Don't get it twisted. Numerology, gematria is a very real thing. But you have to understand what you're doing. You also have to understand how to take that numerology aspect and connect it to what actually counts, which is the Luciferianism. If you're not doing that, all you are is an accountant. You're itemizing shit on somebody's tax return. You don't understand what's going to come next. All you understand is what happened, and that's to a certain degree. And that's what I try to implore you brothers to do. But we know that the so-called black man is infatuated with the so-called white man, especially you cats who don't believe in the scriptures. Your head just gets dazzled by every fucking thing. But that's neither here nor there. But once again, just getting back to the point, Clarence the 13X was dealing with the Kabbalah and Gematria. That was his job. That's what he was sent into the Nation of Islam to do, to cause a splinter and reintroduce Kabbalah, or the Babylonian Kemetic Mystery School system, into the Nation of Islam. They were trying to steer it another direction. So let me read it again. After reading an NOI book with 34 riddles known as the Lost Found Lessons, John 37X concluded that numbers represented specific concepts such as knowledge or wisdom. He referred to this system as living mathematics. Once again, brothers, this is nothing new. Pythagoras also stumbled onto this same concept. The concepts of Pythagoras became a religion during the time of the ancient Greeks. It wasn't just about mathematics. He referred to this system as living mathematics. During its development, he was imprisoned on firearms charges. While John 37X was in prison, Clarence the 13X taught a system of beliefs he referred to as supreme wisdom, which he saw as the core of Islam to groups of young men. He was assisted by his friend James Howard, with whom he developed a modified version of living mathematics, supreme mathematics, and an accompanying doctrine about letters, the supreme alphabet. Once again, brothers, what is that? That is Kabbalah. That is Gematria. The development of these systems, considered a divine science by adherents, may have been influenced by the teachings of Sufism. Like some schools of Sufism, they found esoteric meanings in the alphabet. And by the way, there are esoteric meanings in the alphabet. When you go back to the Proto-Hebrew, you understand that each letter represented a concept. It wasn't just a letter representing a number, it also represented a concept, like the head of the ox, or the triangle being the doorway, things of that nature. So let's read on. It says here, the development of these systems, considered a divine science by adherents, may have been influenced by the teachings of Sufism. Like some schools of Sufism, they found esoteric meanings in the alphabet. David Smirdra of the Boston Globe compares these teachings to Kabbalah. Felicia Miyakawa of Middle Tennessee State University sees similarities to Gnosticism and Kemetism.